Hey everybody, good evening and welcome to DPP Rally Talk Show with Claudia. As a reminder, don't forget we protest on May 22nd at all capitals. How can you be a part of the protest? You could visit us on Facebook and you can join the national page, or you can head over to don'tpunishpainrally.com. Tonight joining us is Dr. Arnold Feldman. Hi Dr. Feldman, how are you?
Hi, Claudia. I'm okay. Can you hear me? Hear me okay?
Yes. I apologize about the technical difficulties, everybody, but when we go live, sometimes things go awry. So Dr. Feldman and I, we've been talking for about, I want to say since last summer. And I don't know how we found each other, but we did, and I'm glad because Dr. Feldman has, an incredible story. So, Dr. Feldman, let's start from the beginning. You are originally from Philadelphia.
That's correct. I was born in Philadelphia. My father was a doctor. I was raised in a medical family and always wanted to become a doctor. So I was fortunate to, my father died when I was 12. And my mother, who was a typical doting Jewish mother, said to me, "You're going to be a doctor or you're not going to be anything." So I became a doctor, and I went to medical school in Philadelphia and at the Medical College of Pennsylvania. And I was then accepted for an internship at Thomas Jefferson, which is a big medical center in Philadelphia and medical school. And I did an internship in internal medicine, and then I was fortunate to be accepted to the Harvard program in anesthesiology. So I went to Boston and finished my anesthesiology training at Harvard.
So you're an anesthesiologist.
I was an anesthesiologist first. I've become a few other things. Some of them I wouldn't want to tell on the air, but I quickly went into practice and moved from 75 Francis Street in Boston to Mobile, Alabama, and kind of a different environment. But in the beginning of my career, Mobile was actually a very good medical community, and I had been trained by what I consider, and some people would argue, but I think the best anesthesiology program in the country at the time. And we were heavily trained in what I call regional anesthesia, meaning nerve blocks, spinals, epidurals, because our chairman, who was a guy that was just a very, very, very intelligent guy who was a pharmacologist and then became a doctor and then became the chairman of the department at Harvard because he was such a prolific researcher. And he taught me spinals, epidurals, nerve blocks. And when I came out into practice, I went to a very busy hospital called the Mobile Infirmary, where I met my wife, Linda, who was an OR nurse, and we, shortly thereafter, kind of got married, and I was asked by the people in Mobile, because of my training and skills, can you do something with all of these patients that have pain? Now, remember, this is back in the 1980s. Nobody really knew what a pain clinic was. As far as I remember, the only pain clinic was at a place called the Virginia Mason Clinic in Seattle, Washington. There were no other pain clinics. So I quickly developed a pain clinic because there was a need. Now, back in the day, nobody questioned whether there was a need for a pain clinic or whether pain patients should be treated or not. That was not even a debate. And so, my pain clinic grew, and it grew pretty quickly. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to fast forward because we already have callers coming in. What happened? Let's jump right to it. When was your first? Okay. So you have this amazing practice was it Louisiana? I thought it was. Why did I think Louisiana for some reason?
Well, I laugh about this, but I'm serious about it. I don't know why, but something made me move to the deep, deep South, meaning Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. Now,
right.
These are areas
Where was your pain clinic?
Well, the first one was in Mobile a long time ago, and then I moved to a small town called Natchez, Mississippi, a very very tiny town. But I was, again, accepted there. People would say that I was a very good doctor. And my attitude was that just because you live in a small town doesn't mean you can't deliver high-quality medicine.
Sure.
And so I studied and I innovated, and I did. I don't know if those of you that are listening have heard of intraspinal pump implants. I did the first intraspinal pump implant ever in the state of Alabama, and the first intraspinal pump implant ever in the state of Mississippi. So that doesn't entitle me too much, but what I'm saying is I innovated things for the treatment of chronic pain. Now, fast forward, I practiced in Natchez, meaning anesthesiology, running the anesthesia department in 2 hospitals. I ran the intensive care unit. I took care of the emergency room. I started labor and delivery epidural program, which, believe it or not, you guys living in Rhode Island and Boston, they didn't have epidurals for labor and delivery. There was terrible discrimination against people of color and people that were poor. And so when I went in there, I said, no, we're going to equalize the playing field. And so I did everything.
Yeah.
And so, remember, Natchez is a small town, and Baton Rouge, which is about 88 miles south, is the capital of the state. And my son, who was in the sells real estate, found me a building. He said, you got to see this building. And it was a surgery center that was owned by Hospital Corporation of America. And I bought this surgery center, and I developed it into arguably the most complete, comprehensive, or at least one of them, the most complete and comprehensive pain clinic in the United States of America. So now I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in the year 2003.
Is that where... I want to tell you, because your patients contact me regularly about you, and you're a hero to the people of Louisiana. And I know it's a huge loss to your patients, to, what you're going through, and they wholeheartedly support you. When did you first start to have problems with the medical board, the DEA? What year was that?
Well, I never had a problem with the DEA. And let me tell you, it's hard. It's a long story. I'm trying to keep it short for people. But basically, I'm the type of individual, if I need help from somebody, it's very rare that I ask for help, meaning I'm an independent person. And so I looked at my pain patients. Pain patients have been sort of shuffled off to the side for a long, long time. And so I realized, I said, look, I have the skills, I have the knowledge, I have the desire to help these patients. And so I started out with a little tiny clinic, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And when I say bigger, my clinic finally wound up to be 2 buildings, 20,000 square feet, 3 operating rooms, a recovery room, a pre-op room, 2 MRI scanners, a CT scanner, a laboratory, physical therapy, and all the accoutrements thereof. And it was just me. And so the reason, I didn't do those things to get, any accolades of greatness. What I realized is I always tried to adhere to the rules. Okay, I was very cognizant of the rules, meaning the rules of medicine, the rules of prescribing. And so if they say, and this is an important statement, you must make a diagnosis before you treat people with opiates. I said, okay, well, I'll make a diagnosis. I'll get an MRI scanner or a CT scanner, and I will look and look and look and look for the causes of pain. And I did that. Now, very few doctors have done that. And so, in other words, any patient that saw me, the first thing I did was listen to them, examine them, and then look for causes of pain that were treatable and curable. But those of you that are listening that have chronic pain, you and I know, and the government doesn't know, that 97% of the time, you do not find a treatable cause. That doesn't mean you can't treat the patient, make them better, and give them a better life. It's no different than treating hypertension and diabetes. So I'm fine. Matter of fact, the Medical Board of Louisiana used to occasionally send me a physician that they considered maybe somebody that was going down the wrong road, and said, go see a legitimate doctor and let him teach you how to practice pain medicine. So they used to send me doctors rather. Actually sent me some patients as well. So the medical board respected me, at least as far as I could see. And medical boards are kind of like the IRS. You really don't want to deal with them if you don't have to. That's a mistake on their part, but they're not your friends, and now it turns out they're not the friends of the patient. So my problems began in 2010 when my competitor, meaning
another doctor, Okay.
and his name is Dr. John Birdeye. He started a pain clinic and has 7 locations and 10 doctors, and they run patients like a, how should we say, a revolving door. And these patients basically are forced to have injections, nerve blocks, expensive surgical procedures, and they give them a small amount of opiates. But these patients are smart enough to realize that if they say no, they throw them out on the street. And I consider that completely unethical, probably illegal. But what I did was I went to the authorities and I reported this. And when I say the authorities, I went to the FBI because I considered this fraud. Now I'm not a snitch. My mama told me don't be a snitch, but this was so egregious. And remember, I worked my whole life to build my clinic as a legitimate place for people to get help. And you know what happened? They came after me instead. And that is why I am where I am today, meaning I'm now an advocate, right? But I guess I'm still a doctor, but they don't. Well, let me just give you one thing. I got a letter yesterday from the medical board saying, "Dear Dr. Feldman, your suspension is over, and we'd like you to consider getting your license back, but you need to write us a check for $500,000."
That's right. We've had this discussion. We're gonna sneak in a caller with an area code 20 through. I beg your pardon, 20 through. Hi, caller.
Hi, this is Shirley. I'm calling, wondering what your patients do now that you are not practicing.
Well, first of all, I hear from my patients all the time, and I have to make this disclaimer that I'm not practicing anymore, but I try to help them find doctors. But what I have found is what you all have found. First of all, there were never very many pain doctors in the state of Louisiana. It's just kind of a wasteland for that. And this one guy that I mentioned controls 90% of the pain medicine in the state. So they're basically, most of my patients have been told, well, you were a patient of Dr. Feldman, we're not seeing you. It's kind of like sour grapes, because I have fought these people pretty hard. Number 2, I do refer them to a few doctors that I know that will accept them. But remember, these patients have other problems which have since developed. For instance, if I was to, remember, Louisiana and Mississippi border on each other. So if you live 20 miles from the border and you go to Mississippi and a doctor will see you, suddenly the pharmacy will not fill a prescription across state lines, even though there's no rule that says they cannot. So patients that live in a state are sort of stuck there. If they can find a pain doctor, they have to stay there. If they can't find a pain doctor, they either have to move or basically go without. And this is a problem that I'm seeing because I read all the emails that y'all write. This is a problem I'm seeing everywhere. And so this is why I participate in this group, because I believe the only way that this is going to change is by legislation, and we got to get patients, large numbers of patients and doctors together, and we need congressional hearings for starters.
So, Dr. Feldman, how do you propose we go about getting this congressional hearing? Because you and we are trying to establish relationships with working doctors, and a valid point that you make. So there were 3 things that you wanted to discuss tonight. One is we need doctors to testify for other doctors when they're in this type of situation. Did you have a doctor testifying on your behalf at any of your hearings? Because you didn't.
Well, let's put it this way. The only hearing I had in front of, medical boards, we didn't talk about medical boards, but medical boards are basically do the dirty work for the DEA. That's my opinion, and I think that the facts will bear this out. So the only doctor, of course, I put on a vigorous defense, and they just basically made up charges. And I had a guy from Mobile, Alabama, who's a whiz, and he testified for me. And if you read his testimony, he basically said Arnold is not only a good doctor, he's a great doctor. Well, then they got the nephew of the director of investigations, who's a doctor named Dr. William Beto, to testify against me. Remember, they paid the nephew of the director of investigations to testify against me. Now, if that's not a kangaroo court, nothing is. And he basically said the opposite. No, he's a terrible doctor. So there was no judge. Remember, this is a hearing in front of the medical board of my economic competitor running the board. So there's no judge, there's no independent jury, and there is no due process. And this is the general way it goes. So then when they suspended my license, I appealed it to the courts in Louisiana, but that takes years.
Sure.
And
okay.
So what? And Claudia, you know as well as I, you know the court system better than most people. So the only way to get the government to do what we need them to do is to get them to change the laws. Now, I am about to embark on some litigation against these people, but still, that's just one thing. And you know the story of Mr. Robert Rose. That's a long road and a difficult road. So we need, and believe me, we got, one thing I did is I got that crazy woman that was running that medical board. I participated with a very astute state senator, and we got her fired. So the doctors in Louisiana, they owe us all a debt of gratitude, but I took almost a lethal hit for this, if you understand my
I'm going to sneak in a real quick
it.
question here for you, Dr.
Sure.
Feldman. Ariana Grande has a question. How do we make the PDMPs a physician's eyes-only system and then return jurisdiction regarding prescribing issues, complaints, into the hands of the medical boards?
Well, let me answer that. When the prescription, the idea of a prescription database. Remember, my background, and I'll say this openly. You know, I took communion, so I'm sort of like Jews for Jesus. But my background is traditional Judaism, and so we think the worst of everything. So when I heard about the prescription database, maybe 15 years ago, this is what I thought. I said, you know, it's a double-edged sword. And when you start giving this data out, the wrong people are going to get a hold of it. And that's what happens. Because when these databases first came out, it was illegal to use them except for medical purposes. But the DEA pushed their way so they now use them as what I call a trolling tool. So the Attorney General, and I think Jeff Sessions started this, but maybe before that. The Attorney General now has authorized these task forces. Now, what these task forces do, and I found this out the other day, they hire this company called Domex, which is domestic. Think about, I want you to listen to the words. Domestic media exploitation. And basically what that means is the government pays these people millions of dollars to troll this database and go through the prescriptions and then target and identify doctors and prepare indictments. That's what's going on now. And the only thing that's going to stop this is congressional legislation, because we can complain all we want.
Because we have to bring this, so, you know, we have to make the senators aware of what's happening. Do we think they know what's happening, or... I would imagine.
Well,
now
they don't.
Because
they don't.
you mentioned John Milkovich quite a bit. You seem to like Senator Milkovich.
I met him by accident. Mm-hmm. John, and forgive me, Claudia. I'm so passionate about this. I'm like sort of full of knowledge, but I want people. Tell me when to slow down. John is a rare guy. I didn't know him before, and John is a super religious man. And when he sees something that's wrong, he finds it difficult to keep his mouth shut. You understand what I mean? And he saw a number of doctors commit suicide because of overreach by the medical board.
Oh, how tragic.
And he wrote a legislation, and he brought it up in front of the Health and Welfare Committee and asked me to testify because he heard about me. I didn't know him, and I did. And I'm going to put that link. It's on video. And I testified for about 29 minutes, but John got up and he said, look, this woman that's running this medical board has caused these people to have suicide, and I want her gone. And they fired her the next week, maybe 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But she had caused the deaths of people, including one of my patients. And, I mean, not by accident, directly caused the death of one of my patients. And I went to the FBI, I went to the DEA, I went to the Supreme Court Office of Legal Ethics. And you know what I get? Silence. So John,
can the listeners contact John Milkovich?
Yes, and I'm going to get you his number. I will put it up on your site. And John is running for re-election in October. So anybody that's from Louisiana, and of course he's in the Shreveport area, tell everybody about John Milkovich. Now you may not agree with all his politics, but he's an honorable man. I speak to him just about every day. We talk about these things, and you know what he tells me? He yells at me all the time, kind of like my mama. He says, Arnold, don't be a whiner, be a winner. So that's what we have to do. We have to be winners. Yes. And I'm tired of hearing myself whine. But remember this. Look, I feel for everybody. I don't know why. There's something in me that attracted me to pain in terms of something that needs to be taken care of. So Milkovich, in every state has a Milkovich. We just have to identify them and educate them. Yeah. And the federal, 435 congressmen and senators, they have the John Milkoviches too. But y'all, I don't know who they are, but we got to find them. And
we will
find somebody with an open mind. That's important.
Well, it's like a Representative Greg Amore, a Senator John Milkovich. They're there. We just have to scope these individuals out. Let me ask your opinion about something. Because there's a lot of discussion amongst doctors on Twitter regarding the DEA's involvement working alongside the medical board. How involved do you think the DEA was with your case? Because you and we've discussed your case. I've asked you to go through every count with me. And
listen, I had DEA agents in my office, 4 of them in one day, right?
All right, let's talk about that day, because I know about that day. Let's share that day with the listeners. Take us through that day.
Remember, I have a large office, or had a large office. So I'm sitting in my office seeing patients, and the office manager says, there's somebody here to see you. And so there's 4 women. Now they didn't come with guns blazing. Now, they since have changed there, too. Now they come in with guns and machine guns and lasers and, you know what I'm talking about, like you see on television. And so, they said, well, we want you to let us, search your office. So I had a lawyer, a lady lawyer, and I called her up, and she was right next door, and I said, come over here. So she says, well, and they hand you this piece of paper to sign so you can voluntarily let them see your office, voluntarily. And so I said, I'm not signing that. She goes, sign it. So I signed it, right? So they go through all this crap, and pardon my language, and of course they didn't find anything because there was nothing to find. And so I did a drug study for AstraZeneca for this drug called Movantik. I don't know if you've heard of that. That's for opiate-induced constipation.
Sure. Yep.
So at that time, an investigational drug is Schedule 1 because it doesn't have an approved use yet. It's a drug for constipation. It's now on the market. It's not even a scheduled drug at all. So when the study was done, the excess pills that I had, I returned them to Astra, the pharmaceutical company. So they come in my office and say, where are these pills? And I said, I don't know where the hell they are. I sent them back to the company. And they started to accuse me of misappropriating a scheduled substance. So I said to my assistant, get on the phone and call Astra because I had the number, and they said, oh, the DEA returned them to us. The DEA came and took the drugs. So the DEA took the drugs, and they were trying to accuse me of misappropriating the drugs. And basically what I call that is I believe they were trying to extort money from me, if you understand my point. In other words, I did what was proper, and they were lying. It's kind of like when they plant, drugs in the car of somebody and then bust them, right? So they were trying to arrange some sort of malfeasance, but there was no malfeasance. And so they didn't ever get me for anything, because there was nothing to get me for, because I'm an honest guy. So they go to the medical board and they tell them, you go get it. So then they trumped up all these charges and they suspended my license, but it was a long enough suspension where I couldn't economically support my clinic. And so I lost everything, including my house, my car, the clinic, my MRI scanner, my CT scanner. Basically, I have the clothes on my back, and my wonderful wife, who just had surgery a week ago, and she got no pain medicine, by the way. Again. So
right now you're without a license, but you can get your license back in exchange for $500,000. If you had that $500,000, if you gave the Louisiana Medical Board $500,000, would you be able to open shop again and to prescribe and to doctor like a doctor does, or would there be restrictions?
Remember, I'm Jewish, so I'm going to tell you the good part and the bad part. You'd think if you would give somebody $500,000 that they would do what they said they were going to do, right? The answer is no. They would never give me my license back. And if they did, they would say I could never prescribe again, even though I have no infractions on prescribing. And then, even if they did, then you would have to go to the DEA and say, I want my DEA number back, right?
That's right.
Well, you remember when Moses asked the Pharaoh, let my people go, 10 plagues didn't convince them. And so you would have to take them to court and, again, start that rigmarole all over again. But, the interesting thing was, I've had a number of judges, state and federal, that were my patients, that would swear on the Bible that I was a very good doctor. I've had 2 directors of the Mississippi Medical Board that were my patients, and I treated them and their families, and they would swear that I was a very good doctor. But the one thing I don't think the public understands is, do you know who really runs the medical boards? Lawyers.
We do. That's right.
That's who runs medical boards. And so basically...
Because you need lawyers to prosecute the attorneys, and so a medical board has to, there's a bid for lawyers. Lawyers get a large sum of money in exchange for providing medical services to the medical board, and they've got to come through. They have to have a win-win record. And I would imagine these lawyers are making a whole lot of money. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was listening to something you were saying. How can we help?
Basically, you said, what if I gave these people $500,000? So this is just my opinion for what it's worth. Remember Reverend Myers. Those of you who didn't know Reverend Myers, I only know him a little bit, and just this is a man that went through the civil rights era. I'm talking about the real civil rights era in the 60s. And I went through a civil rights era. Remember, I lived in Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. And those places are not exactly up to the modern day in terms of attitudes, right? And so Reverend Myers was, having been through marches and having been prosecuted, and probably a lot worse, said to me and others, we need a congressional hearing. We need a congressional hearing. And we went to Washington approximately 1 year.
And he worked with Linda Cheek, Doctors of Courage, and they would go to Washington, and I think that's where you met Reverend Myers, if I'm not mistaken, Doc Myers?
I did, and other people that were similarly situated, and some patients, and we protested in front of the Justice Department. Now, let me tell you, it's an interesting thing. We're just out there, maybe 50 of us, and, Washington's a big city. And, all these people would come out of the Justice Department, and they're like, kind of sitting there, and they kind of look like they work for the government, and they're snapping pictures and this and that. So, you know what I'm saying? It's like domestic spying. And so the bottom line is this. These people have usurped power, meaning medical boards, and 2 things happened this week or last week, which is, it's a good start. This FDA statement about not stopping opioids. Mm-hmm. This is a momentous thing, but we've only gotten to first base. We got to keep going,
Yeah,
And
because some people believe because the CDC issued that clarification along with the FDA that we're in the clear, we don't have to protest. And I said, oh no, people, this is the time. This is where we really need to go in full throttle mode because I think we're very far away from a solution, unfortunately. But it is just first base, and I think it's imperative to get working doctors to support the doctors that are in trouble right now. I spoke with Dr. Randy. He's in Louisiana, and his case was just, I mean, I spoke with him at length, and his case was about a person who diverted their medication. How is a doctor supposed to know that somebody is diverting their medication? I mean, it's like someone breaking in your home and stealing your gun, and there's a murder. This is something doctors have no control over, but yet they're being targeted and persecuted, and the medical boards, they terrorize doctors, and it's not just in Louisiana, it's in every state. Every doctor I speak with from all over the country say the medical boards, they're poison, they're toxic. And some of the people on the medical boards, they're not even doctors. I don't understand how this happens.
Well, let me say this. I don't understand it either because like I said, my view of life is, I guess, different than these.
We're gonna sneak in. We're gonna take caller area code 209. Hi, caller. What's your question?
Hi, Claudia. It's Ariane.
Hi, Ariane.
I kind of I typed in the question regarding making the PDMP a physician's only system, but it seems to me the last congressional hearing that we had on opioids, we saw our senators get information from a pain advocate, and
Cindy
the
Steinberg.
advocate, and she was telling our senators, not unlike many of us have done by letter, that doctors are afraid of prescribing. And she said it in no uncertain terms a number of times, and the senators never once asked why.
Right.
Now, to me, that indicates a level of knowledge about why they're not prescribing, why there is fear of prescribing. And it kind of lends to our feeling that this goes a lot deeper. And when we look at state by state, the amount of money that's coming in to combat the opioid crisis, when we know this has nothing to do, or very little to do with prescribing as far as people abusing opioid drugs and then ODing. And yet, most of the focus has been on prescribing and prescribers. It still is. And it once again, it kind of, this whole law enforcement involvement, to me, seems suspicious. It seems unnecessary when we really examine the statistics, and we see that, less than 1% of people who with no history of substance use disorder go on to OD or have a problem with addiction. And I think first and foremost, we need to get law enforcement out of the equation, period.
Dr. Feldman, how do you think we could do that? How do you think we could eliminate law enforcement? Thank you, Ariane. Dr. Feldman, how can we eliminate law enforcement from the equation?
Okay. When I was practicing, I'm going to guess around the year 2000, DuPont, I guess, no, it was whoever made Duragesic. What company is that? Johnson & Johnson. They owned a company called, it's changed hands a few times, but Johnson & Johnson first marketed fentanyl patches for cancer pain, and then they got indications for chronic pain. And what they did was hire former DEA agents to educate people that this is a safe drug, which it was a safe drug if used appropriately, used as directed. And so what they're trying to do now is basically, you see, I read this today. Somebody made a statement, if you take an opiate, you're likely to become an addict. That is just not true. So rather than exclude law enforcement, we need to find some law enforcement leaders that are clear thinkers, and we need to get them to help us. That sounds like, I guess you, go ahead.
No, I agree. But why not, my sister works with the federal government, and I discussed this with her earlier, and I said, I don't know why we're not interviewing retired DEA agents that are willing to help the cause, and maybe they can give us an insight into what's happening, into the mindset. I do agree with you because, I'm surrounded with law enforcement, and they say, Claudia, are you familiar with illicit fentanyl? Because that's all we see on the streets. And, we're familiar with the real culprit, the real killer. And of course we have to acknowledge we have an overdosing epidemic, because to not do so wouldn't be accurate. But I think the best way, it's just an idea, maybe bringing on retired DEA agents, bringing them into the equation, retired FBI. Maybe there's something that they know that we don't. But the law enforcement targeting doctors, this isn't just this is a daily and probably an hourly occurrence now. Do you have friends? You visit other doctors in prison now, don't you? There's a friend of yours that's been incarcerated.
I spoke to one about 2 hours ago. So those of you that have never done this, and I never did before, I went to visit this doctor. His name is John Couch, and I've known John for 20 years. When I said we were colleagues, we didn't live in the same place, but when I left Mobile, he came a few years later, and he was a very good guy. And a very skilled guy, and he built a very good practice. Meaning, I taught him a lot, but he was smart. And when I say smart and skilled and concerned and ethical. And his practice, Mobile, he was like one of the only pain doctors there, so his practice grew and grew and grew. And so one day, the feds come in, and they shut down his practice, and 8,000 patients in one day had no pain doctor. 8,000 patients. And a number of those people have committed suicide, and they sentenced him to 20 years in prison. And he's in a prison in a place called Forest City, Arkansas. Now, the interesting thing about the federal government, Forest City, Arkansas, is named after Nathan Bedford Forrest. And those of you that are Southerners, and those of you that are students of history, Nathan Bedford Forrest started the Ku Klux Klan. Now, why the federal government has a prison in a place that's named after a Ku Klux Klan founder, I'll never know. But when you serve in a federal prison, they apparently have these sentencing guidelines, which are, I think the word we use is draconian. So you got 20 years, and in a federal prison, if you are the nicest, best, most cooperative person in the world, you still have to serve 85% of your sentence.
That's right. We're going to sneak in a quick caller. Area code 269. What's your question?
Ray calling from, it's Jesse Ray calling from Michigan. And I've got a question for you, Dr. Feldman. Do you believe, like Dr. Myers has said, and along with Dr. Henson on Janelle's show a couple of times, if we get rid of the Controlled Substance Act, that's going to be the only way we get the DEA out of the doctor's office. Because that's something I heard Dr. Myers say time and time again.
Well,
what are your feelings on that, Dr. Feldman?
Well, that's kind of like saying, if we got rid of the Nazis, then we wouldn't have this problem in Germany in 1942. It's easier said than done. So, again, I don't think there's not a one avenue solution. To me, you have to look at the successful groups that have gotten things done. And I have to tell you that living down south for 30 years, the civil rights movement, boy, let me tell you, those civil rights activists fought hard. I mean, we up north, we were living up north, and we didn't really understand it. But,
we're going to take in another caller real quickly. We want to get as many questions as we can. Area code 208. Area code 208. How are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm having a problem getting my Bluetooth off. But okay. This is Maggie. I'm
Hi,
in
Maggie.
Idaho. I've been through several states, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Texas, seeing doctors. I've had chronic pain for 25 years plus. And I have heard DEA threats from doctors going back to 2002. And it was mainly a way for them to try to coerce me into injections or other types of treatment. I had a ITP pump put in 2001. So I have a little different perspective because I've heard this for years, but I saw the fruition of it because the best doctor I've ever known, the one that gave me the pump in 2001, saved my life several times, traveling back and forth to see him, and he was taken out by DEA.
So, okay.
So
you know,
I read an article. I read an article today. Does anybody look at pharmacist Steve's writings? Who's I think they're
I
kind of
did.
posted on your
I
website.
saw that earlier today.
Okay, if that's true, what he says that the FDA rules supreme in terms of prescribing and rules, then how is it that the CDC usurped their authority? Now, this is something we could go to the Congressional Oversight Committee or the FDA Oversight Committee or the Justice Department or some committee. But basically
it's the DEA. It's the DEA Oversight Committee because my senator's on it.
We got to go there. Even if we lose, we got to open the conversation.
We need some answers. Linda Cheek, Dr. Linda Cheek, we know her story. Linda spent 7 years, I believe, in federal prison. Her question is, why do people refuse to learn the real cause of addiction?
I'm not sure what she means by that.
I'm not sure. Maybe I misread that. My apologies if I did. I should have had.
No, I think you're correct. And we should have Linda on the show one day because she's very knowledgeable. But I will say this: look, patients don't come to you and say, "I have a genetic predisposition to addiction." You have to see them regularly. You have to follow them. And, I guess I was fortunate. I never had a patient overdose on medication, but I've had to discharge a few patients over the years because of noncompliance. But, we cannot cure all of the ills of society. And in any system, you're going to have outliers, but the vast majority of people with chronic pain are legitimate. That is my feeling, and that feeling of most pain professionals. And so this is the way I look at it. Addicted people should be offered help, medical help, if they can get it. Chronic pain patients are a totally different class of patients. They're not even related. They just happen to overlap a little bit. And this is what we have to tell the Congress. And the other thing which I believe was effective, which we're not doing, and I see people mention it on the website, first of all, we need 1 million members. That's one thing. Number two, we need to boycott these pharmacies that are not nice to our membership. That's effective.
We do. We really want to boost our membership. And you say that to me frequently. Why don't we have more members? We're so limited in getting the word out to the country. I think we've made some success this past week. Are you going to be protesting with us? I think you protested with us in January, Dr. Feldman. Will we see you at a protest on May 22nd?
Yes. Well, here's the thing. I volunteered. I'm the only idiot that would do this. I heard about this doctor, and I won't say his name on the air, so to speak, but he has a trial coming up starting Monday. He had no expert witness. They seized all his assets, meaning the DEA. He's a young guy, 36 years old. He's facing life in prison, probably, or 25 years in prison. And I was reading the records, and it's a bunch of nonsense. Now, so I agreed to be a volunteer. So I may have to drive up to Virginia and sit in court and try to defend this guy. And I think I can provide a cogent explanation for things. But let me tell you something. I read the expert reports that they had. So one of those, the government goes and pays somebody $10, $20, $50,000, and they basically say whatever they say. Now me, I'm the type of person, you couldn't pay me enough money to lie about somebody. But I have to go and try to do my, now that I'm a reformed I'm a reformed Jewish person, I'm doing what God and Jesus tells me to do. So here's my plan. Here's what I have to do. Those of you that are listening, I got to take my wife to the pain doctor, try to find a pharmacy to fill our prescription, drive to Virginia, get crucified on the stand by a federal prosecutor, try to defend this doctor, and then I'll come to the meeting.
Okay. So,
that makes sense.
What we do in the Doctors Collaborative is we try to give doctors, working doctors, a confidential setting, and that's on don'tpunishpainrally.com. But I'm also, whenever doctors come to me, I send them right over to Doctors of Courage, Linda Cheek, because Linda's a doctor, and I believe you should all be working together. I offered the Doctors Collaborative just as a place of refuge for doctors, and, it just never, I'm not on there that frequently. I see the doctors on there, but we want to establish a legal defense fund. There's another doctor that his case was just awful to read about, Dr. Joel Smithers, and I posted his GoFundMe. And he looks like a young guy with kids, and
that's the doctor I'm going to testify for.
Oh, okay. All right. So I was given permission to mention his name. I posted his GoFundMe as well today. And you need a GoFundMe. You all need a GoFundMe. That's the problem. And the hopes with the Doctors Collaborative is we could have a place where we could have working doctors. And I say working doctors over and over and over because they're working and they have an income coming in. Dr. Randy, he's already out $200,000. You're out $300,000. Where is all this money going? It's going to lawyers.
To lawyers.
Yeah, we really need. We're going to take caller with area code 971. Hi there. How are you?
Hi, this is Joy from Oregon.
Hi, Joy.
Hi. My question is there a list of the names of the physicians that are in prisons or up for trial that we could get? And a lot of people are excellent with letter writing to the prison boards, just saying, we support this physician. Is there a list somewhere with names?
Go ahead, Claudia.
Well, we just approved Dr. Henson. I believe Janelle has Dr. Henson's information because I asked Janelle to ask his wife, can we put money in his account so he can buy things as he needs while he's incarcerated, and can we write letters, boost his spirits? And she said yes. I just wanted permission before I went ahead and posted anything on the page. I do not. Maybe Linda has a list of all the doctors who are now incarcerated. I'm not sure. By the way, Joy, I love you. I adore you. And I have a huge amount of respect for you as a DPP member. So let me put that out there now. But we do want to, there's got to be a way that we can show these doctors support, even if it's just sending them a weekly letter or a monthly letter, because I believe we've got to give these doctors hope. I'm so grateful that you're not in prison, you're not indicted, and we're going to be sure that doesn't happen. But we want to continue the support. We're going to take another caller in here. I believe we have do we still have caller 910, or did they leave? I think maybe they left. So you are going, I didn't realize you were going to Dr. Smithers' trial on Monday. What's the stat? What happened with his case? Briefly.
Well, from what I can see, look, he's a young guy. He's living in a rural area, and the story is that the rural South got hit bad by the OxyContin problem. Of course, this doesn't say anything about legitimate patients, and so let me tell you, when you're a pain doctor, you obviously have people especially a new pain doctor. When you're a new pain doctor, everybody that's illegitimate as well as legitimate tries to see the new doctor, right? It's like that old Eagles song, there's a new kid in town. So he's a great guy, and he's done a good job, and of course, he's had a couple of, like we all have, a couple of disreputable people. And so I don't know how, but the authority, you see, that what they did was what you said earlier. They take this prescription monitoring database, and they don't use it now to do an investigation. They do it to initiate an investigation. So they look at who the highest prescribers are, and obviously the pain doctors are going to be the highest prescribers. And they initiate an investigation, and they recruit, what they call CIs, confidential informants, which are usually people that have broken the law and make plea bargains. And these people will sell their mothers out for a lesser prison term. And so that's apparently what happens to many of these people. So I'm going to testify. I've read the records. I've read the expert reports. I've only had them for a few days. And, I've been doing this for 35 plus years, and I found some glaring errors. But the problem is, this is a criminal trial, and I've never testified in a criminal trial, but I know my science, and I feel that a jury, if you are able to present the real story, would understand. But what I saw in Couch's case, when I followed it in some other cases, the judges don't let the defense present an even-handed story. We've
got one other question. I don't mean to, I apologize for interrupting. So Beverly Diaz, another great Don't Punish Pain Texas member, asks, why aren't doctors willing to stand up for one another? Why aren't they willing to help one another?
Well, in my opinion, there's a lot of reasons. At this point in time, meaning as we speak today, the number one reason is fear. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
When I say fear, they're afraid of the DEA. Okay, so those. I remember when I mentioned, or somebody else mentioned, and I agreed on the website a month or two ago. This is like Nazi Germany. This is so like Nazi Germany, it's not even funny. But the truth of the matter is, it's the fear factor. Now, if you go back a few years, doctors, remember, we're fiercely competitive. We always think we're better than the next guy, and so some way, and some doctors, they like to see somebody fail. But see, I've never been of that ilk. It's not me. And so the long and the short of it is, if you had to say it in one word, it's fear of the, or a few words, fear of the DEA.
Fear of the DEA. Just it's that same narrative coming back. The DEA, the medical boards, people, the egos. When I first started this, I had no idea that a doctor would rat out another doctor. But that we had a case in Providence. You and I discussed this, and I spoke with him, a psychiatrist, and they went into his office, and he's a Suboxone doctor, and this always makes me laugh every time I say it. When the FBI went into his office, he said, "Oh, what are you doing? I'm the good guy." And I said, "You're the good guy? Why are you a good guy? You're different from the pain management doctors. You think you're immune." And we're starting to see more Suboxone doctors get hit. Seems like those people have figured out a way to abuse Suboxone, separate the Narcan from the medication. So I don't even think Suboxone doctors are immune from this disaster. I think everybody is fair game in the medical field, nurse practitioners, physician assistants. And I think if we could come up with some tools to provide doctors, most importantly, we need to get the word out to working doctors to support one another. And every time I come across a doctor, I always say, look, you got to help you got to help your colleagues out. This could be you. It could be for a different situation. What are some ways to get doctors involved? We've got about 2 minutes here to wrap up. If you were a working doctor, and you're a great guy, Dr. Feldman, I have an enormous amount of respect for you. I'm glad our paths have crossed. When I first spoke with you, I thought you were like a 90-year-old man. And when I saw you on a live feed, I said, "Oh my gosh, this man, he's a young guy. How old are you?"
Well, Linda, can I tell him how old I am? That's my wife.
Yep.
I'm just kidding you. I'm 64.
I mean, 64. You're a Harvard-trained physician. 64 years old.
I trained at Harvard. Most of the people that trained me are long gone. But they taught me a lot. And like I said, I never lost my passion for what I did, even today.
No.
And so,
and you've mentioned coming to Rhode Island and applying for a Rhode Island license. And I'll tell you, it would be the dream team with Dr. Feldman, with Representative Amori. So we're going to continue to fight for doctors. I want the listeners to remember Call 360 Network. We have Dr. Klein on Tuesday on the Doctor's Corner. Dr. Feldman, we're going to continue. You and I, we speak daily. We usually speak when I'm taking my little one to school at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and we try and brainstorm. And we're going to try and speak with Linda Cheekmore and Nita Thompson. We're going to touch base, and we're going to make things happen. I think the pain community is really working. They're doing their thing, and now it's time for the doctors to take the power back. We're going to do it. We're going to be effective. It's going to take time. We're going to get that congressional hearing, and we're going to get the DEA out of the doctors' offices, and we're going to hold the medical boards accountable. So what's the next step? Let's end on this note. What's the next step for your case? We've got about 30 seconds left.
The next step for my case is I'm going to reapply for my license, which was in Mississippi, where actually I think a well-respected person, and I have respect for the medical board of Mississippi, but I may be able to get my license back in Mississippi. Good people, but remember, they bow to pressure. So I just want to say one thing for all that is listening. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Janelle, and all the people of Don't Punish Pain. Because let me tell you something. It's a godsend, this organization. And thank you all for listening to.
Yeah, we're gonna continue
evolving.
Yeah, we're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to empower one another. We're going to get doctors' help. We're going to get pain patients' help. It's a day by day. Sometimes it's an hour by hour. Don't forget, visit don'tpunishpainrally.com if you're interested in protesting. Don't think, well, I don't have to protest because if I don't go, what's the big deal? We need everybody. We need numbers at the CDC protest on June 21st. We need numbers on May 22nd on the protest. Actually, I just sent out my press release today to several different media stations. Listen, people, Don't Punish Pain Rally organization. We empower one another. We embrace one another. We get you through those tough times. We try to do it with some humor. Thank you, everybody, for listening. DPP Rally Talk Show with Claudia. Next Sunday's show, we're going to really focus on the protest and how can we make this protest number 4, more amazing than ever. Everybody, have a great night. Stay strong. I find my strength in your strength. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for the DPP Rally Talk Show. Subscribe to our channel at DPP Rally Talk Show with Claudia on YouTube. Copyright 2019. All rights reserved.